Hi everyone, I'm Leo and I'm a freelance artist working on character designs and environment art for animation shows, toys and way more. More than a year ago I started creating tutorials about how I draw and I'm posting that on Instagram. And then I started selling ebooks and video tutorials and started a Patreon page. So I became sort of an online teacher. And that's also why Proko asked me to make a video about how to draw. Hope you like the video, thanks!
Let's draw a bird. So I start with the line of action. So first I figure out what kind of character I want to draw. And I want to draw this bird that is standing on a branch. So I think this line will be fine for this. Just a simple character pose. So then I start with drawing the head as a simple ball and then the main body. And later I will start breaking these shapes down, but I always like to start with these big shapes and I try to think about some flow of it in energy and flow, etc. And let's draw this wing like this, a nice S shape. So I'm always also like to use S lines, try to avoid straight too much, but for example here for these legs, I think these straight lines work perfect because you want them to be strong on this branch. So here this branch is like this here. We have the main shapes. So this is how I like to start drawing and then I check if I like it and I can always change stuff on the go. But this is the base I'm starting with. So I'm erasing these lines a little bit. So the next step is to draw the construction. So what I also do is look on the internet for reference. For example, for a bird, I do look up the anatomy of the bird. For example, the skeleton. When you look at the skeleton of a bird, it basically looks a bit like this. So the skull here, and of course I simplify it. And then here you have these eye sockets like this nose hole, and then for example this mouth, this jaw, something like this. Then I also check the other parts of the bones, but I try to simplify this and I use this for the construction. So for example, when this is the head, I start drawing in, these are called perspective guides. And these help to determine the direction of this head. So this is the direction I'm going to draw in this beak. I actually think I even want to just beak a bit up like this. Then here. So I'm really thinking in these basic shapes, but it's also important to not make it too stiff. So be careful when you're drawing a character. Try to maintain some flow in it, like this angle in the head. Always also drawing through your shapes. And what I mean with that is here, for example, these lines, you won't see that in the final drawing, but you're seeing it in the sketch. And then here, adding here this mask to check if the eyes are on the correct spot, if that works. Here some cheeks like this. I have the feeling this head is maybe a little bit high. So that's the cool thing about working digitally. You can cheat a little bit. That's also why I actually think it's really good to start learning to draw on paper, because you can learn a lot from that. I draw a lot digitally. I also try to draw a lot on paper. But when you're working digitally, because you can cheat that much there, why not use it? Do I want to give this breast, or do I want to give him a little tummy? I think I want to do this. I don't like this brush for now, eraser now. So you can see when I'm sketching, I'm just using basic round brush, nothing special. Of course, you now see this sketch, but normally nobody will see this sketch, so I don't really mind how these lines look. These lines are really sketchy, and I'm just trying to search some stuff. I think this wing is way too big. So let's erase these parts a little bit. So when you look at the bones, or how the wing is built. Here these feathers go these directions. So something like this, and then here this bony part, something like this. Then I'm going to draw in the legs. Yeah, I think I want to have this one a little bit longer. So again, cheating a little bit. So sometimes I mirror my drawing to check if I like everything. I think still this wing looks quite big, but maybe, yeah, I think I will check it later and see if it works. So once I have this, I can start drawing on top of it. So let's zoom in a little bit on the head. So when you're zooming in always, then it's really easy to start drawing in too much detail. So watch out for that. So now I'm going to start adding not the final lines, but sort of the final sketch. So I start to think about all the things I want to have in it. This line could be, maybe this could be in S shape. I don't know, a slide, S line, something like this. And here, this mouth, let's draw in this tongue. So I'm also thinking about the construction. So with construction, I mean what I did with these perspective lines, that it looks solid, that it looks three-dimensional. But I also think, yeah, gesture and line of action and the flow is also important. So I always try to think about nice balance between those things, because you need strong construction to let it look solid, but you also want to, yeah, keep your drawing dynamic and lifelike. Eyebrows, drawing an eyebrow, and then here this line. And it's still not the final line art. In the final line art, I will try to add some more edges and corners and stuff. Maybe change some little things. Let's add some feathers here, like this. Holes, maybe something like this. And let's zoom out. And let's draw the rest of the body. So here this part is connected to the head. I want to have this one nice single line. Then here we have this wing. So here you can see that I'm drawing on top of those construction shapes. So I'm also trying to avoid symmetry as much as I can. Also, I don't like to use parallel lines. And let's draw in here these toes, these nails. So I'm also using overlapping lines. Have this branch, draw in here these feathers. Let's break it down in 3 shapes. Add a V, an arrow kind of shape here. There's this gap here. There's a smaller gap here. So I'm also trying to play around with sizes, big, small. Most of the time I'm playing around with big, small, and medium. Let's start drawing in this wing, like this. So it's basically like these have some fingers. And you can see I'm following these lines. It's almost like they're coming from one point. What I can do is maybe make this one a little bit bigger and then this one a little bit smaller. And then here we have a line, because there are the bones. And here's the most thickest there. What would happen if I make the eye smaller? Be a little bit here. This eye. Yeah, I think I do like this more. So that's also how I try out different things. Normally I would even try and play around more with that. So even in this stage, you can still change stuff before you start inking. The earlier you can change stuff, the better it is. So check if I like it. Yeah, I think this could work. So when I really want to make a clean drawing, I'm drawing on a separate layer on top of this, but you can draw on a separate layer or on the layer itself. So I take a brush I want to ink this drawing with. So I'm using this rough brush, as you can see here. So it's basically like this, but it looks like a bit like a pencil. Zoom in a little bit, 100%. But don't try to zoom in more than this. Let's draw in this eye. I'm not going to add too much details. So I'm working on a Wacom Cintiq, and I like to work on a screen tablet display because then you can see where your hand is, and then you can even measure things with your hand on the screen. So with my fingers, I actually check the same size of these pupils. So note that this one is bigger than that one that is actually closer. So now I'm also trying to add some corners. And then later I can check if that's actually in something I like or not. Eyebrows. This here you can see it's not perfect round, but I'm trying to give it that little bit of a sharp corner. And line thickness. For example, these eyebrows are of course super thick because those are really important for the expressions. When I'm inking something, I try to give the most important shapes, like the head or the mouth, the most thickest lines. I'm not always doing that, but what you could do is first ink the most important lines and then save the details for last and give those thinner lines. This tongue, here this cheek. So when drawing a line, try to think about how these lines wrap around the shapes. So it's consistent, and try to be confident when you're drawing these lines. The quicker you are with setting a line, the more energy there is in these lines. When you don't like a line, you can just Control Z, the magic of digital. And just keep adding these lines. So here, these overlapping lines are also really important. I think I want to have these two lines overlapping those other shapes. Something like this, big, small, medium. Then draw in these legs. Here I'm going to color it, and if I don't like some of the lines, I can always change them. Make these lines a little bit more interesting than the sketch. These little happy accidents. When I have to draw a long line, sometimes I make a separate layer, another layer, so you can easily change some stuff. And going down like this, let's draw in some feathers and a line going like this. So here it's a bit wider than here, so there's some, I don't want to make it exactly parallel to that other line. Continue like this here. And we've inked this drawing, and now we can start coloring it. So add a layer below it. Let's start first with coloring the parts have this main color, and I can always change the colors later. Especially with colors, a lot of times you can judge if it fits when it's done. So I'm using this rough brush because I also want to get these rough edges, so also in the color. Yeah, let's erase these parts here. It's going to be red. Fill this, and let's make this red. Let's add another layer below that. Take this red, maybe make this a bit lighter. Yeah, for these parts. Maybe this works. Let's just keep going. Actually, don't mind, that's not perfect at all places. I want to keep it a little bit rough. Another color here around the eyes. Make this a little bit lighter, something like this. Let's go for this orange beak. I think that also fits really well with the red. And of course, it's really the typical color for a bird beak. And with Ctrl U, see if maybe a different color works. Maybe this color works better. Yeah, I think this works better. I try to avoid pure white. We're going for maybe blue eyes, the opposite color on this color wheel. Maybe just let's try it out. You can always change it. I think I do like it. It gives a nice contrast. You can also make them green, because that's actually the opposite color of a red. Something like this, or maybe I did actually like the blue. Now let's go for the blue one. This tongue, it's red, just using the same red as there. I want to have this a bit lighter, like this, a little bit less saturated. Sometimes I also like to use the lasso tool like this. Here, let's add here a bit of these kinds of rough edges. So now we can actually start adding in some shadows. So I combined everything here in this layer, and then I merge everything, all these layers, and then I make a selection of the whole silhouette of the bird. And then I turn that layer off, I make a new layer, and I put that layer on multiply, and I take this purple, light purple color, and I fill this hole, and you can see it gets a bit dark. Not super dark, but just a little bit. And then let's take just this white color. Also, let's take this gray here. And then with X, I can switch between these colors. So let's put it again on multiply. And then with white, I can start drawing in light. So the light is coming from this top left corner. This cheek. I just want to make it simpler. Oh, actually, let's add a mask. This. Oh. This folder. And so you can just draw inside this. So now you can just add shadow and try out different stuff. Yeah, I could better just start it with no shadow and just start adding shadow, but this one works as well. Some light here from the breast, and some light here, here, here. And you know what? To finish off, let's add some highlights here in these. I think you can notice that I'm just experimenting and always playing a bit around. So yeah, then I finished this character. I hope you liked it. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Mitch. If you enjoyed this lesson and want to see more, Mitch now has a course on Proko.com. His How to Draw Animals bundle has hours of video showing you construction, line of action, turnarounds, portfolio tips, and way more. And he includes 2 ebooks as well. Check out Proko.com/MitchLeo to see more. See you all next time.